this shutdown is in part about the hate that King espouses. A wall, it's just a political stunt designed to demonize the same people that Steve King does. So maybe the president's not calling out Steve King because he is now doing what King always dreamed of. Republicans, what is your party about? What is it being made into by those in power? This is not your party at its best. Thank you for watching. CNN Tonight with D. Lemon starts right now with big news.
Hey, I do. But before I let you go, here's what I want to say. The president said this on Friday, right? He said about brown and black people at the border, we have a country that is being invaded by criminals and by drugs, and we're going to stop it. That's what he said. So you're right on. He is contributing to this because many believe that's what that wall is about. And not many believe it is, right? Because we're not talking about a wall on the northern border. It's just really frustrating because when people deny their racism, maybe we should get them a definition, Steve King and the president, of what racism is, because they deny it. And instead, as I've told you before, the people who call it out, they call us racist and race baiters.
Listen, you often attack what you don't understand and what you don't like. They know what they're saying. And the proof of it is that they do it opportunistically and they do it repetitively. Look at the president on drugs from the border. Do we have a lot of drugs coming across the border? Hell yes, we do. Is it contributing to our problems of addiction here? Hell yes, it is. It's just not coming on foot. And a wall's not going to stop it. Not just because of El Chapo's tunnels and all the cartels, but as we know from DHS, as they use their word, the bulk of it is their phrase, comes across points of entry in vehicles.
Yes.
But he's not loud and proud about the X-ray machines. That's not his big war. I want more money for detection devices than it's ever been given before. He wants the wall because the wall was his simple solution to demonizing who comes across.
The wall he believes is going to save him. And without that wall, I think it was Lindsey Graham who said if he doesn't get that wall, it's the end of his presidency. I don't know about that, but I think it certainly does some real damage to his credibility with that base. But I mean, but again, to Steve King, I don't understand. And by the way, bravo to Tim Scott, right? The only one, and more people should be joining him. The only one to actually write about it. Other people have spoken out about it, but then there's no teeth. They don't do anything. There's no censure. There's nothing.
Of the value of diversity.
Exactly.
Remember we were talking about somebody else, let's not bring up any names. We were talking about another media figure who was sitting at a table and said something that was racially stupid. And you made a good point. You said, you know, you're sitting at a table with people who aren't sensitized to it. You know, if I had been at that table, you said, talking about yourself, I would have set her straight like that.
Right.
That's what diversity does on one level, is that when you have people with different experiences and different feelings and insights, you come to better consensus about things like this. Yeah, Tim Scott came out. He's the one black guy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He's the one black senator. He comes out, he says it.
But maybe people just don't know that they are racist.
Please.
But in the situation that you're talking about, I think sometimes people have a wake-up call, and it's a punch, it's a slap, not a slap in the face, it's a punch in the face, and they don't realize it. I think Steve King knows exactly what he's doing.
Look, what happened was...
if he doesn't know he's a racist,
look, let's be honest.
He's
Let's be
delusional.
honest for a second. I feel like you right now. I do. I feel like we just switched positions here. Look, this is what's changed. These guys used to keep their mouths shut, or they used to be pushed out to the fringe, and they stayed there. Tom Tancredo, Steve King.
Hold on.
He's been pushing this stuff for years. What's changed is it's now mainstream in that party.
No, I want you to make your point. I'm not talking about, I was talking about you talked about the analogy, the person if I was sitting at the table. As far as Steve King is concerned.
No, the journalist, I'm with you on that.
Okay,
but these guys, come on, man. He knows what he's been selling, just nobody was buying it until Donald J. Trump went and met with him during the primaries. He was like, wow, this stuff really resonates with the base. Let me pick up on this. He's an acolyte of King, the president. It's not the other way around. Maybe that's why he's quiet, because he can't speak down to this man. He can't call him out. He owned all of his same ideas.
Yeah.
He's living the dream that Steve King had.
I'll tell you the worry for many people who are enlightened, right? But mostly for people of color, minorities, marginalized communities, are concerned about where we go from here. number one, if we're going to survive all of this bigotry and racism and hate and stupidity and ignorance and so on, but then what happens to the country after that? Is it irreparable? Is it something that's going to take generations to overcome? Because remember, 50 years ago, Dr. King or so lost his life, right? And how much has changed in 50 years? We still have people who have these views, who are pushing for these views, and who are afraid of the diversity in America. I wish we had that picture of the new Congress and the new Senate, right? And if you look at the Democratic side and
You know
look
what
at the
Steve
Republican
King called
side,
that picture?
yeah,
Steve
no
King.
place for white men.
That's right.
Yeah.
Now, there's proof positive. He knows what he's saying. He knows what he's saying, and he gets it wrong
giving away the
fundamentally. It's not that
fear,
there's no
too.
place for white men. You've got to make room for everybody.
Right.
That's the point.
Exactly. That's the point. But that he's giving it away. We're afraid that there will be no room for us.
And that used
we
to be
will
a
not
fringe idea that was remedied not by silencing it,
Yeah.
but by showing, by way of instruction and experience, that we're better than that.
That
We're
we
better
won't-
than that because of our diversity.
Well, I don't know if we keep going back and forth about this, you and I at least. I'm not sure if we're better than that. I think that's who
I believe we
that's
are.
who we are. Well, I think we can be better than that, but I believe that's who we are right now. Listen, people like Steve King, honestly, are afraid of not being the preeminent voice in America, not having things go the way that they've always been going, right? Really having to share the country in the way that our forefathers thought that we should do, the way that they meant it to happen. That's what he's afraid of, and people like him. That's what bigots and racists are afraid of. It. And sadly, I believe many of the supporters of this president are afraid of that, and they won't tell you that is the reason that they voted for him, because they want to keep America the way that they think it should be.
Even if
Yeah.
everything you just said is true,
Yep.
they're still a minority population in this country.
Look at this. Put that
And
up
the
for us.
future of the
Andy.
country is diversity.
There you go. Do you see that?
He looks at this and he sees limitations. I look at it and I see expansion and strength. Imagine the potential of this country when we harness the power and the value of all the different types of people in it.
Yeah.
Imagine that. I don't see that as meaning that I'm going to be a dinosaur.
Right.
That people with my complexion will be ruled out. I think that you'll be
Evolving.
made better.
Exactly. Thank you, Chris Cuomo. I got some breaking news. I understand we have some new people just added to the rundown in the show. I will see you next week, if not this weekend. Have a good one.
You too.
Thank you. This is CNN Tonight. I'm Don Lemon. We do have some breaking news that I need to tell you about. It is explosive tonight, that breaking news. The New York Times is reporting that after President Trump fired FBI Director James Comey, law enforcement officials were so concerned about the behavior of the President of the United States that they began investigating whether he was secretly working on behalf of Russia. That is according to former law enforcement officials and others who are familiar with the investigation. Agents were reportedly also trying to find out whether the president was knowingly working for Russia or was being unwittingly influenced by Moscow. Now, their suspicions were raised during the campaign, but officials held off on opening an investigation, in part because they were uncertain how to proceed with such a sensitive matter. There's a whole lot to get to. Adam Goldman is here of the New York Times, who helped break the story. Adam, good evening to you. Thank you so much. This is a huge story. Walk us through what you and your colleagues have.
Hey, Don, thanks for having me. What we have essentially is after the president fired FBI Director James Comey on May 9th, they became very concerned that there might be a counterintelligence issue here. And the essence of a counterintelligence investigation is there's a threat to national security. Mm-hmm. And then Trump goes on TV with Lester Holt of NBC News and says, I did it because of Russia. So he's telling the FBI, hey, I did it because of Russia. And that sort of tips the scales. And so while they begin investigating the president, there are two elements to this investigation. It's the best way to think about it. There's a criminal element, which is the obstruction of the Russia investigation, and there's a counterintelligence investigation in which they're trying to determine whether he was, in fact, witting or unwittingly working for a hostile foreign power.
You said there's a criminal element and a counterintelligence element? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
and we have to, folks should know there's a difference. This is not about the collusion investigation. This is an investigation that was opened by the FBI. There's a distinction between Mueller and this, correct?
Yeah, I mean, Mueller inherits this investigation, but when they open the investigation on the president in the days after Comey was fired, the investigation itself had two aspects to it, right? Mm-hmm. The obstruction, and the object of that obstruction was the Russia investigation, right, in 2016. And then the second part of it was, the counterintelligence investigation. That's probably the best way to think about it. Mm-hmm. One of the things that concerned me about writing this story is that it's nuanced. And I thought it might get lost on the public because if you talk to your average person, what do they think Mueller's doing, right? Mm-hmm. They think Mueller's investigating whether Trump colluded with the Russians, right? Right. Which is essentially, what I'm reporting here. I'm just telling you how it happened, and what the circumstances were, and what led to it.
I'm glad you said that because I'm trying to get there's a distinction there, and there's so much that goes on with the Russia investigation, so many elements. So on this one, where are we? What you said that Mueller's going to inherit this, and he inherits this. What is the status of this investigation now, Adam?
Don, if I knew that, I'd be on TV hosting my own show. No kidding. I don't know what the status is, but my assumption is that Mueller will have, since he did inherit this investigation, he's going to, if he does write a report, he's going to have to. It would seem likely that he's going to have to answer that question. But more importantly, Don, I think the American public wants to answer that question, right? Mm-hmm. Doesn't the American public want to know if the president was in fact colluding or conspiring with the Russians, right? Isn't this what the Mueller investigation's about?
Right.
Isn't that the expectation?
Yeah. Adam, will you stand by for me, please, because I'm going to need your help as we go through this. I would appreciate it, sir,
sure,
if you can. Okay, so let's bring in now John Dean and Juliette Kayyem. Good evening to both of you. I got to ask you, John, reading this report and hearing what Adam said, just give me your initial thoughts.
My initial thought is that it wasn't just an accident that a special counsel was selected, that there was already a lot of suspicion in the FBI that there was deep concern about this president, enough to open a counterintelligence investigation. So it was a very small step to name or have a special counsel look into this issue of obstruction.
Yeah.
And it's probably expanded well beyond there today.
So let's talk about this, Juliette, you being a security expert. So as Adam said, there's a criminal element to this, and then there's also a counterintelligence investigation into whether the president constituted possible threat to national security. Connect the dots for us here.
Okay, so what we know from Adam's great reporting, and and others who are analyzing this, like Benjamin Wittes at Lawfare, is that the counterintelligence investigation that was started against Donald Trump was focused on the president himself. So this was no longer who in the campaign knew. This is Trump specifically. So just everyone take a step back. The FBI opened a counterintelligence investigation on the president himself. The second thing is that we, and I do this on your show all the time, tend to think of the Mueller investigation in three different pools. There's the financial, there's the obstruction of justice, and there's the collusion, right, with Russia. Now what we need to think about is the collusion, which we tend to think about between Russia and Trump, and the obstruction of justice investigation, which we tend to think of as just a Trump issue, are they the same? I mean, in other words, does the collusion extend to things like the firing of James Comey? And that's a significant move. I'm not going to connect any more dots because we obviously don't know where the investigation went. But I will end with this point. How would a president compromised by the Russians behave? And give me any moment that in the last 2 years where Trump has behaved differently. And that's what I took away from this story.
So, Adam, you're there, right? Can I bring you back in?
Sure. Okay,
so I want to give the White House response because just moments ago the White House responded and said, this is absurd. James Comey was fired because he's a disgraced partisan hack, and his deputy, Andrew McCabe, who was in charge at the time, is a known liar, fired by the FBI. Unlike President Obama, who let Russia and other foreign adversaries push America around, President Trump has actually been tough on Russia. Well, many people think that they would say that Trump has been anything but tough on Russia. What do you say to that response?
I'm not sure that response has anything to do with my reporting. I mean, the facts are what they are. And if you think about what Jim Baker, the general counsel for the FBI, told Congress behind closed door, and we quoted from his testimony, it's really extraordinary thinking that the object of the obstruction, right, the possible obstruction, was the Russia investigation from 2016, and the act of firing Comey, he told Congress, was a national security threat. Was a national security threat.
John, why to this response? Why are the responses from the White House always a deflection or a push to or Obama or Hillary Clinton or whatever? It's never a direct response to the allegations or the evidence there. It's always some sort of deflection and name calling. What's going on?
It's obvious they don't have a good response. They don't either know and they're winging it, or they're trying to deflect, but they don't seem to be able to hit any of this head on. I've seen this in another White House from the inside and seen very similar tactics when you don't have a good response.
Yeah, we've been talking about the reasons that this came up, right? Because according to the New York Times and Adam and his coworkers, investigators were concerned over a letter that Trump wrote to Comey, thanking him for previously telling him that he was not a subject of the FBI's Russia investigation. And then this interview caught their attention.
Regardless of recommendation, I was going to fire Comey, knowing there was no good time to do it. And in fact, when I decided to just do it, I said to myself, I said, you know, this Russia thing with Trump and Russia is a made-up story. It's an excuse by the Democrats for having lost an election that they should have won.
So why would counterintelligence investigators be so interested in these things? Juliet, that's to you.
Yeah, so because this statement is made after a couple other things have happened. First of all, Trump had tried to fire Comey, asking Rosenstein to do it based solely on the Russia investigation. Rosenstein comes back with a sort of more benign explanation. Trump, who always signals what his intentions are because he can't keep it quiet, whether it's him signaling about WikiLeaks or in this, then says it did have to do with the Russia investigation to Lester Holt, and also says so, remember this moment in the Oval Office soon after he fires Comey, he tells the Russian ambassador, I got rid of our problem. What they did not factor in, of course, is that Rosenstein has another move behind him, which is, of course, the picking of Mueller. And I think that is essentially what they did not intend or plan. And it's no surprise at this stage that Trump spends most of his time trying to undermine Mueller and end the investigation. So that's sort of the context of all of that, and would justify the opening of a counterintelligence investigation, because the person who's saying it is the one who's saying, you know, I'm doing it essentially to help the Russians, and stop the Russian investigation, is the president himself. So this is, you know, as I say, there's no smoking guns, but this is part of an understanding of how far this investigation is going for Mueller at this stage.
The breaking news tonight is the FBI opened an inquiry into whether Trump was secretly working on behalf of Russia. That is the breaking news. That is a headline from the New York Times. Adam Goldman, one of the reporters who worked on this, the lead reporter, I would believe, Michael Schmidt as well, and Nicholas Fandos. On that report, we have Adam with us. We also have Juliet and John Dean. We're going to talk to them on the other side of the break.
Great.
This is not a bed. It's a revolution in sleep. The Sleep Number 360 Smart Bed from $9.99 senses your movement and automatically adjusts on each side to keep you both comfortable. And snoring? How smart is that? Smarter sleep to help you lose your dad bod. Train for that marathon? And wake up with the patience of a saint. Sleep Number is ranked #1 in customer satisfaction with mattresses by J.D. Power. And now, save up to $500 on select Sleep Number 360 Smart Beds, only for a limited time.
what we deliver by delivering.
Ordering takeout.
Finding the best route. Talking for hours.
Planning for showers.
Checking the news.
Buying new shoes.
Burning some fat.
Sharing the latest viral cat.
Catching that replay.
Text night and day.
Do all the things you like to do with a wireless plan designed for you. Talk, text, and data for only $25 a month. Nationwide coverage, no contracts. Consumer Cellular, ranked #1 by J.D. Power. Call, go online, or visit any Target.
Hi, I'm Bob Harper, and I recently had a heart attack. It changed my life, but I'm a survivor. After my heart attack, my doctor prescribed Brilinta. It's for people who have been hospitalized for a heart attack.
Brilinta is taken with a low-dose aspirin, no more than 100 milligrams, as it affects how well Brilinta works. Brilinta helps keep platelets from sticking together and forming a clot. In a clinical study, Brilinta worked better than Plavix.
Brilinta reduced the chance of having another heart attack or dying from one.
Don't stop taking Brilinta without talking to your doctor, since stopping it too soon increases your risk of clots in your stent, heart attack, stroke, and even death. Brilinta may cause bruising or bleeding more easily, or serious, sometimes fatal bleeding. Don't take Brilinta if you have bleeding, like stomach ulcers, a history of bleeding in the brain, or severe liver problems. Slow heart rhythm has been reported. Tell your doctor about bleeding, new or unexpected shortness of breath, any planned surgery, and all medicines you take.
If you recently had a heart attack, ask your doctor if Brilinta is right for you. My heart is worth Brilinta.
If you can't afford your medication, AstraZeneca may be able to help.
All of my patients should have a Dexcom because it's just more information. Why wouldn't you want that?
Being able to see your numbers in real time gives you the knowledge to see the future. It's awesome.
Dexcom showed me that I was doing a dip and then a spike in the middle of the night, which allowed me to adjust my basal rates. I'm not waking up in the middle of the night and my numbers aren't going crazy.
Now you are in control, and that is so powerful.
It's time for Vistaprint's semi-annual sale. Save up to 50% off everything, including business cards in a range of shapes and sizes, postcards in multiple sizes and paper stocks, labels and stickers to add that finishing touch, plus much more. It's all up to 50% off. Go to Vistaprint.com before January 11th and enter promo code SAVEBIG. It's the semi-annual sale, happening now at Vistaprint.
We're back now with much more on our bombshell breaking news. The New York Times reporting that after President Trump fired FBI Director James Comey, law enforcement was so concerned that they opened an investigation into whether the president was working on behalf of Russia, either knowingly or unwittingly. John Dean, Juliette Kayyem are back with me. So let's dig into this a little bit more. Juliette, investigators were also troubled by this comment during the campaign. Watch.
Russia, if you're listening, I hope you're able to find the 30,000 emails that are missing.
The Republican Party also softened its convention platform to benefit Russia. What kind of questions does that raise?
So that would, that starts in 2016, and this is, by the reporting in the New York Times, this is when the FBI agents in counterintelligence begin to get concerned about the extent to which Trump is either being manipulated, like does he know or does he not know, or actually actively working with the Russians. What we have to remember is that the Trump campaign was told by the FBI, be careful. The Russians are trying to infiltrate these campaigns and this election. They were told this well before the general, and not a single one of the couple dozen, I think, at this stage who had contacts with the Russians ever told the FBI that this was going on. And I just quickly want to just juxtapose that clip that you just said with a year later, or maybe a little bit more than a year later, which is Helsinki. If there are moments in this investigation when people like me wonder, is this just so obvious and we're looking at the details, we have to also remember Helsinki, that moment where the president essentially standing with Putin says, I'm yours. I have no U.S. interest. I only have Russian interest. Really would be evidence, if the investigation is ongoing, about the nature and extent of relationship between Trump himself and Russia.
What my producer brings up a good point. By saying that, John, this isn't Manafort or Flynn or some sort of character that was associated with Roger Stone, right? With the campaign. This is the President of the United States. And up until now, we have been thinking there is a collusion case and an obstruction case. But after this New York Times report, Benjamin Wittes of Lawfare, he blogs, the Lawfare blog wonders if the act of obstructing could actually be colluding. Does he have a point?
It's a possibility. Don, there's so much below the surface that we can't be sure of, other than we know the high standards that are necessary to start this kind of investigation, particularly on a president of the United States. That by this time we know that they knew many of the activities that had taken place during the transition. Kushner's effort to set up a back channel, Flynn talking with the ambassador about the ambassador to Russia about sanctions. There's all kinds of things going on, and much more than probably has broken the surface in any way that Mueller is well aware of now. So this just sort of puts a sharp focus on that high degree of activity that was going on. And as Juliet says, he's done nothing to dissuade anybody from being in the powers of the Russians at all since becoming president.
Well, I appreciate both of you. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you very much. We're going to have much more in our breaking news tonight. Plus, while some Republicans are criticizing Congressman Steve King for his white supremacy comments, more are silent. How the Republican Party got to this point. That's next.
What makes this simple salad the best simple salad ever? Great tasting, heart healthy California walnuts. So simple, so good. Get the recipes at walnuts.org.
With Fidelity Wealth Management, you get straightforward advice, tailored recommendations, tax-efficient investing strategies, and a dedicated advisor to help you grow and protect your wealth. Fidelity Wealth Management.
Every day, visionaries are creating the future. So every day, we put our latest technology and vast expertise to work. The United States Postal Service makes more e-commerce deliveries to homes than anyone else in the country, affordably and on time. The future only happens with people who really know how to deliver it.
Hey, I heard you moved into a new apartment.
Yeah, it's pretty stressful. This music is supposed to relax me, though.
Maybe you mellow out a bit if you got Geico to help you with your renter's insurance.
Wow. Geico helps with renter's insurance. Good to know.
Yeah, and they can save you a lot of money.
Wow. Suddenly I feel so relieved. You guys are fired.
Get to know Geico and see how much you could save on renter's insurance.
Hiring? It's a big deal. Finding the right candidates can take up lots of your time and energy. But not on Indeed. Millions of great people are using Indeed every single day. People with every possible combination of skill and experience. And with filters to help you find them faster, whatever type of candidates you're looking for, you'll find them on Indeed. Accelerate your hiring even more with a $50 credit to start your first job post with premium placement on Indeed.
TrueCar is great for finding new cars. You're smart, you already knew that. But it's also great for finding the perfect used car. You'll see what a fair price is, and you can connect with a TrueCar certified dealer. Now you're even smarter. This is TrueCar.
The 70s, shaped by the music. Boogie Down as Reels gives you the lowdown on the music legends who played the soundtrack to the max.
We could do anything we wanted, so we did.
It starts with the premiere of Donna Summer, Disco Queen. Love to Love the 70s week. All next week on Reels, Channel 238. Can you dig it?
CoQ10 is the #1 cardiologist recommended supplement for heart health. I take Cunol CoQ10. Why? Because Cunol has 3 times better absorption than regular CoQ10. Cunol, the better CoQ10.
This is CNN, the most trusted name in news.
Tonight we have to talk about Congressman Steve King. We have to talk about his long history of frankly racist comments. And we have to talk about why his party tolerates it. Why do Republicans tolerate it? The GOP is where it is today because the party chose to go down this road, playing to racists and xenophobes, demonizing immigrants, allowing a manufactured crisis at the border to shut down our government. When you do that, what you get is someone like Congressman King, someone who feels emboldened to use language that's not a dog whistle, it's straight up hateful. It's a bullhorn. The latest was just this week when the congressman told the New York Times, quote, "White nationalists, white supremacists, Western civilization, how did that language become offensive? Why did I sit in classes teaching me about the merits of our history and our civilization?" Well, today, Congressman King just made excuses for what he clearly said, sounding an awful lot like he is trying to paint himself as a victim.
I regret the heartburn that has poured forth upon this Congress and this country, and especially in my state and in my congressional district. But the people who know me know I wouldn't have to even make this statement because they do know me. They know my life, they know my history.
Okay, so let's go down some of that history, right? Because let's take some of his history into account here. There's this comment from 2013 about the children of undocumented immigrants.
For everyone who's a valedictorian, there's another 100 out there that they weigh 130 pounds and they've got calves the size of cantaloupes because they're hauling 75 pounds of marijuana across the desert.
There's this from 2017.
We have growing elements in America that want to destroy Western civilization. This argument that diversity is our strength, I just wonder if anybody ever questions that.
Also in 2017, this tweet, quote, "We can't restore our civilization with somebody else's babies." Last year, he did an interview with a far-right Austrian website associated with neo-Nazis and asked, quote, "What does this diversity bring that we don't already have? Mexican food, Chinese food," and on and on. He endorsed a white supremacist for mayor of Toronto, and he follows an Australian anti-Semitic activist on Twitter. A senior GOP aide tells CNN that Congressman King's latest comments are a tipping point. It's not at all clear that his party will take action on this. But in an op-ed in today's Washington Post, pay close attention to this. Senator Tim Scott of South Carolina, the only black Republican senator, said this, and I quote, "When people with opinions similar to King's open their mouths, they damage not only the Republican Party and the conservative brand, but our nation as a whole. Some in our party wonder why Republicans are constantly accused of racism. It is because of our silence when things like this are said." Bravo, Senator Scott. You are absolutely right. You can't have it both ways. You can't argue for a wall to keep migrants out without being accused of racism. And when it comes to the wall, Congressman King has out-Trumped Trump. There's this photo. It's from the early days of the Trump administration. Congressman King showing his own model of a wall to John Kelly just before he became the Secretary of Homeland Security. And this tweet, just a few months later, quote, "Congress will fund the wall. Trump will build a wall. It is a mandate from the American people. Honor the mandate from we the people." Like I said, this is the direction the GOP chose. And what you get when you do that is Donald Trump.
They're bringing drugs, they're bringing crime, they're rapists, and some, I assume, are good people. Donald J. Trump is calling for a total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the United States. I think there's blame on both sides. You had some very bad people in that group, but you also had people that were very fine people on both sides.
What you get is a manufactured crisis over the wall and a government shutdown that's poised to become the longest in our nation's history. The president upping the ante today, calling the crisis at the border a crisis of his own making, an invasion.
You know, we have a country that is under siege. You could actually, you know, a lot of people don't like the word invasion. We have a country that's being invaded by criminals and by drugs.
And we're going to stop it. That was the last part. This is the direction the GOP chose. But it didn't have to be this way. We've talked before about Ronald Reagan's final address of his presidency. And I want you to listen to these are more wise words from the 40th president.
I've spoken of the shining city all my political life. In my mind, it was a tall, proud city built on rocks stronger than oceans, windswept, God-blessed, and teeming with people of all kinds living in harmony and peace. A city with free ports that hummed with commerce and creativity. And if there had to be city walls, the walls had doors, and the doors were open to anyone with the will and the heart to get here.
My gosh, contrast that to the Oval Office speech just a few nights ago. Walls with doors, doors open to anyone with the will and the heart to get here. That sounds to me like making America greater. It's always been great. Lots to talk about tonight with Nia Malika Henderson and Charlie Dent. We'll dig into that next.
Sometimes bipolar I disorder can really get you going. But mania, such as unusual changes in your mood, activity, or energy levels, can leave you on shaky ground. Help take control by asking your healthcare provider about Vraylar. Vraylar treats acute mania of bipolar I disorder. Vraylar significantly reduces overall manic symptoms and was proven in adults with mixed episodes who have both mania and depression. Vraylar should not be used in elderly patients with dementia due to increased risk of death or stroke. Call your doctor about fever, stiff muscles, or confusion, which may mean a life-threatening reaction, or uncontrollable muscle movements, which may be permanent. Side effects may not appear for several weeks. High cholesterol and weight gain, high blood sugar, which can lead to coma or death, decreased white blood cells, which can be fatal, dizziness upon standing, falls, seizures, impaired judgment, heat sensitivity, and trouble swallowing may occur. You're more than just your bipolar I. Ask about Vraylar.
T-Mobile knows dancing is better when you include a partner. Singing is better when you include a friend. And unlimited is better with a phone included. It's true. $40 with the other guys doesn't include a phone. So start the new year right. Join T-Mobile and get unlimited with a phone included for just $40 per line.
From the founder of Discovery Channel comes a new independent streaming service, Curiosity Stream. Home of groundbreaking documentaries and award-winning original series. Follow your curiosity. This is Curiosity Stream.
Need a change of scenery? Kayak searches hundreds of travel sites and lets you filter by takeoff time, layovers, and more, so you can be confident you're getting the right flight at the best price. Kayak. Search one and done.
I'm a bunch of wind. And just like your stomach after that strip mall sushi, well, I'm a bit unpredictable. Let's redecorate. What's the matter, Tanya? I thought you loved being spontaneous. I do. And if you got the wrong home insurance coverage, I might break the bank, too. So get Allstate and be better protected from mayhem, like me.
Tomorrow, former New York Times reporter Alex Berenson joins Smerconish. See why he thinks pot is so harmful. Is there a true link to schizophrenia and violence, as Berenson suggests? Don't miss Smerconish, tomorrow morning at 9 Eastern.
Do you have $10,000 or more in debt? Struggling to keep up with credit card payments? There is a way out. Freedom Debt Relief. Their affordable program could help you save money and be debt-free in 24 to 48 months.
Since I started with Freedom Debt Relief, I'm saving money each month and I'm getting my debt paid down.
You could eliminate your debt with just one low monthly program payment that fits your budget.
Find out how quickly you could be debt-free. Call now, 1-800-319-9951.
Freedom Debt Relief has resolved over $10 billion in debt for hundreds of thousands of Americans. So before your debt gets any worse, give them a call.
Freedom saved me a lot of money. I am so grateful.
Their certified debt consultants are standing by, ready to help.
Call 1-800-319-9951 to start eliminating your debt now. That's 1-800-319-9951.
I know that you like my style. I know that you like my style.
So Republican Congressman Steve King was unapologetic today about his latest shocking comments, this time about white supremacy. But what does that all say about the state of the Republican Party? Here to discuss Nia Malika Henderson and former Republican Congressman Charlie Dent. Good evening to both of you.
Good evening.
Charlie, what's wrong with Steve King?
Well, as you went through a long litany of his history, and I think this time he's just finally gotten to the point where I think the leadership has finally woken up and said enough, and that it's time that there's a change, there's a primary opponent, time to remove him. I feel like this is almost like a Todd Akin moment. Remember when he made those comments about legitimate rape, and everybody just stopped and said, "This is just so out of bounds. We've got to do something about it." Enough, and they've got, and and he's unapologetic about it, and it's just a really sad point. But I think it speaks to a larger issue. I've been worried about this nativist, protectionist, isolationist element within the Republican Party that is those are just bad characteristics, bad traits, and I think it can lead at times to some of these types of really
that's why he feels so
moments.
emboldened, you think, because of just the climate that has been out there.
Yeah. I think it's part of it. Absolutely, I think that's a part of it, and I don't know how you put an end to it other than Tim Scott I thought nailed it. I
want to talk about that, but hold on. Does he feel protected or like he's bulletproof somehow because no one really, people may say stuff, but no one really does anything about it?
Well, I'll tell you what, I think the issue is he's been making some of these types of comments now for several years, and he was just reelected. I mean, his constituents were aware of it, and he was still elected. Now, he barely won this time, and I suspect that this is, I think he's finally gone a bridge too far.
All right, Nia, hi, welcome.
Hey there.
So listen, this is a reaction from the House GOP leadership, okay, and I'm going to give some quotes. Reckless, wrong, offensive, abhorrent, racist. But what good is outcome if there's no accountability?
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, is he going to be formally censured? Is he going to be stripped of any committee positions he has? Again, he has been saying these types of things for years. And I think the issue here is much broader than Steve King. You played that clip from Ronald Reagan, for instance. I mean, Ronald Reagan himself played to racial fears and racialized stereotypes. I mean, he was one of the people who really popularized the term welfare queens. And when he launched his campaign, he very much was kind of using the Southern strategy, talking about states' rights in the South, which was obviously seen as a dog whistle to folks in the South who used the idea of states' rights to defend segregation. So this has been a long problem, I think, in the GOP. And you have Donald Trump come along and really pick up a lot of these pieces and strains in the Republican Party that we've seen over the last 50 years and really, I think, put them all together in a really toxic brew that was successful for him in 2016. Even somebody like Steve King, Donald Trump borrowed from Steve King a lot of the language that he saw Steve King use with his constituents there in Iowa. So it's a problem that's much bigger, I think, than Steve King. You see in that editorial that Tim Scott obviously talking about Steve King there, but also essentially saying, without saying, that anybody who uses this kind of language, it's a problem, and shame on the GOP for being silent. Yeah. And the thing is, Tim Scott had been silent in some ways, and certainly much of the GOP had been silent around the birtherism claims that were so popular in the GOP, and of course Donald Trump picked up on those as well.
Yeah. So let's talk about, you wanted to respond to the Tim Scott op-ed, okay, Charlie, so let's let you do it now. He condemned King in the Washington Post, and he writes in part, "Some in our party wonder why Republicans are constantly accused of racism. It is because of our own silence when things like this are said." How big of a problem, honestly, is this in your party?
Well, I think it's a bigger problem than anybody would like to admit. I think that's the reality. Now, Don, I'll share an experience that I had with you once when I was in the House. When I was running my bill on military construction in the VA for the Appropriations Committee, and somebody tried to offer an amendment to make it easier to permit the display of the Confederate flag at unions at veteran cemeteries, and I objected to this, and I remember getting a lot of grief over this from some members, because I said I really didn't appreciate it, and they couldn't understand why I would block the display of the Confederate flag. And I said I'm from Pennsylvania, and we won that war. You know, that's how I had to answer them. I said, you know, I really don't want to have to answer this anymore. I don't think we should have this discussion at all. And this was even after Nikki Haley had taken down the Confederate battle flag in the South Carolina State Capitol grounds. So we were having this debate after the fact. And this wasn't on television. It was behind the scenes, but I'm having this argument with some members over the Confederate flag. I didn't want anything to do with it.
Thank you both. I thank you both. We'll continue the conversation. Have a good weekend. Stay with us. Washington Governor Jay Inslee is with me next.
Tremfya can help adults with moderate to severe plaque psoriasis get clearer and stay clearer. Most patients who saw 90% clear skin at 28 weeks stayed clear through 48 weeks.
Tremfya may lower your ability to fight infections and may increase your risk of infections. Before treatment, your doctor should check you for infections and tuberculosis. Tell your doctor if you have an infection or have symptoms such as fever, sweats, chills, muscle aches, or cough. Before starting Tremfya, tell your doctor if you plan to or have recently received a vaccine.
Tremfya, stay clearer. Janssen can help you explore cost support options.
Night, buddy.
Arms, stay. Turndown service, brought to you by ADT. A smart home with 24/7 protection, designed and installed just for you.
With moderate to severe Crohn's disease, I was there. Just not always where I needed to be.
Is she all right?
I hope so. So I talked to my doctor about Humira. I learned Humira is for people who still have symptoms of Crohn's disease after trying other medications. And the majority of people on Humira saw significant symptom relief, and many achieved remission in as little as 4 weeks.
Humira can lower your ability to fight infections, including tuberculosis. Serious, sometimes fatal infections and cancers, including lymphoma, have happened, as have blood, liver, and nervous system problems, serious allergic reactions, and new or worsening heart failure. Before treatment, get tested for TB. Tell your doctor if you've been to areas where certain fungal infections are common, and if you've had TB, hepatitis B, are prone to infections, or have flu-like symptoms or sores. Don't start Humira if you have an infection.
Be there for you and them. Ask your gastroenterologist about Humira. With Humira, remission is possible.
6-year-old Asawa doesn't smile anymore because the other children won't play with him. For Ailu, it's difficult just to eat or drink. Zenu can't bear to hear the names they call her. Alan is too frightened to go outside anymore. He just wishes the loneliness will go away. For children living with untreated clefts in the developing world, their lives can be filled with heartache and pain. Some will face a life of isolation, sickness, and infection. Many find it difficult just to eat or drink or even breathe. But a safe surgery could change their life forever. Please, will you do something incredible today and help them smile? Visit supportsmiletrain.org or call the toll-free number below with your gift of $21 a month to Smile Train. That's only 70 cents a day. And when you do, you'll help a child with an untreated cleft get the safe surgery that will change their life forever. When you sign up with your monthly gift, you'll receive regular updates and photos of children who've been helped by a community of generous supporters like you. You can help these children feel like they belong, give them a chance to learn, to play, and be accepted. You'll help take away the pain and give them a new smile, a future, a chance to shine. Just call the number below or visit supportsmiletrain.org with your gift of only 70 cents a day. But please, do it today. Because a child like Ailu needs to know there's hope for the future. Go online or call now.
In just days, you could win the Publishers Clearinghouse $5,000 a week forever prize. Merch, $5,000 a week for your life. Then after that, someone you choose gets $5 grand a week for their life. Hurry, enter at PCH.com, and February 28th, win forever.
The federal government, get this, is on the verge of the longest shutdown in history. And with Democrats not budging on the president's demand for border wall funding, there's no end in sight to all of this. Jay Inslee is the Democratic governor of Washington State, and he joins me now. It's good to see you again. Thank you so much for coming on. And Happy New Year to you, by the way.
Yeah, it's been a Happy New Year so far.
I'm sure you saw,
this.
yeah. I'm sure you saw the breaking news that we did, or you've at least read up a little bit on it. On the New York Times report tonight that the FBI opened an inquiry into whether Trump was possibly working on behalf of Russia. What do you think of that?
Well, I think first off, there might have been a legitimate question of whether Donald Trump was a Russian asset, but we certainly know he has been a liability since he's been in office. That has been clear, and what I would say about this is that this is a good sign. Every time one of our pillars of democracy gives us hope that we will be able to restrain rogue activities out of the White House, it's a really positive thing, because I think when you think of the Trump administration, the long-term question will be whether democracy in its fundamentals has remained healthy and intact. And that means that no one can hold us hostage successfully. That means that no one can subvert justice and that no one can obstruct justice. So the fact that the FBI had enough courage to start that process, in fact, if that happened, to me is a positive thing. Now, obviously, ultimately, the Mueller investigation, together with vigorous House of Representative investigations, need to get to the bottom of all of this, and I believe that we will.
Thank you for that response on that. Let's talk about the shutdown now, because this government shutdown poses some challenges that are unique to your state. What are some of them?
Well, there's dozens of them, and the more you peel back this onion, you find out more how interrelated the federal and state governments are. So, for instance, I live on an island. To get there, you take a ferry boat from Seattle. We will not be able to have service on 4 of our ferry boats in the next several weeks, or we may not. Again, this is a risk, because you need to have Coast Guard inspections to certify them at a regular basis. Now, you wouldn't thought that a president holding hostage the American people could end up denying ferry service to people who have to get to an island or to another Puget Sound city, but that may be in the circumstance. In a few weeks, we'll be looking at people losing their nutrition for 800,000 people in food stamps as a possibility. And I have to tell you, I was in a meeting the other day. It was a mixed group, Democrats and Republicans. And I just interrupted what I was saying because I saw the Coast Guard facility over to my right. And I said, it is not right that people who are bound and determined to save our lives aren't getting paid. And that was probably the biggest ovation I've had from Republicans and Democrats alike. And it's sad that we now have an emergency involving national security because our border guards and others aren't getting what they need because of the presidential insecurity of this president. And this hostage taking, and that's what it is, needs to be defeated.
I want to know how you see this shutdown, which, by the way, in just over an hour, close to an hour, will be the longest one on record.
Yeah.
Is it a failure of governing, in your opinion?
It's a hostage taking, pure and simple. Look, I served in Congress many years. I respect people's disagreements, sincere disagreements about matters of policy. But we need to understand this situation. There was consensus of 100-0 in the Senate of a bill that both parties agreed to.
Right.
The situation is we have a president who has this bumper sticker fixation, who doesn't have the courage to stand up to Ann Coulter. And as a result, he's taking hostage my citizens who may not get their nutritional benefits, ferry riders who may not have a ferry to ride on, and federal workers who can't pay their rent tonight. Now, that's just wrong. And if we yield to this type of hostage-taking protocol, God help us. So we cannot allow this to become standard operating procedure. And what we've got to hope for is that we will have enough Republicans, and they're starting to crack in the Senate, will stand up and say, we just can't do this to our people anymore. We can't allow Donald Trump's fixations to damage our people. And let's hope that that happens.
Let's talk more about the cause of the shutdown, because you've hit on some points here about the cause of it and what you believe. And I think it's frustrating to many people when they say it's a both sides issue. Well, this, you know, obviously the Democrats are dug in as well, but there was an agreement, and the president is the one who decided to shut down the government, has moved the goalposts. He's fixated on building a border wall between the U.S. and Mexico, but you represent a state that shares a border with Canada. And compared to the South, there are a fraction of Customs and Border Patrol agents. Do we need the wall?
Listen, everybody who has any ounce of information about this, Republicans and Democrats alike to some degree, understand that there are places where a barrier makes sense for security purposes. But there's hundreds, if not 1,000 miles of areas where it is an absolute waste of money. You know how many people you could put to college? I don't know how many thousands, but it's in the thousands. Mm-hmm. Today I announced a huge increase in financial aid for my students in Washington State. Mm-hmm. But instead of putting those people in college, you're going to have some monument to Donald Trump's personal insecurity out in the desert that isn't helping anybody do anything. Mm-hmm. No. This is actually a threat to national security because it takes money away from things that are legitimate things that we need to do, perhaps in the Department of Defense.
Yeah.
Now, what he is threatening to do now, which is to take money out of the Department of Defense for things that do provide us national security, is itself weakening our protections.
And Governor, listen, I want to get to this, and I'm sorry because I'm up against the clock. I got to get to the top of the hour, but it's an important issue. Sorry to give you short shrift. I'm going to apologize. But you announced a measure granting pardons to certain people with past marijuana convictions in your state. What was behind your decision, and how has it gone so far?
Well, first, it's just unfair, unjust to have a life sentence of a blot on your record for something that is no longer illegal. And this prevents people sometimes from getting financing, college loans, even take your kid on a field trip. So it's just a just thing to do. I think people understand that. Second, listen, we have so much racial disparity in our criminal justice system. We know that people have used marijuana historically kind of uniformly across ethnicity, but African American people were convicted 2 to 3 times more often. So this is a small way to chip it away at the massive racial disparity that has haunted us for decades. Third, I think it does help remove some of the stigma. Look, our country is moving towards legalization rapidly. If this helps other senators and governors get a little dose of courage and federally legalize marijuana, that'll be a good thing. It's what the people want. We ought to do it. And we're going in the right direction.
The producer gods have granted us a little more time, and I'm grateful for that. So I have to ask you, you're headed to New Hampshire later this month. You just served as chair for the, you know where this is going. You just served as chair for the Democratic Governors Association. You helped flip 7 states to Democrat. You just set up a federal political action committee. Sounds to me like someone who's running for president. Are you?
Well, I'm seriously considering it. I do have some very compelling convictions that we do need a president who will make climate change a paramount, first and foremost issue, who will rally the American people to the tremendous capabilities we have as a nation that defeated fascism and put a man on the moon. And we need that same type of rallying cry from the presidential office right now. I don't think it would be bad to have a governor who's part of the effort that has created the best economy in the nation because of the progressive things we've done of net neutrality and paid family leave and raising the minimum wage and doing gender pay equity and having a great transportation infrastructure program when they can't build a birdhouse in Washington, D.C. So I am considering it. And I'll be in Nevada tomorrow talking to some great Democrats who've elected a lot of Democrats in Nevada.
Sounds like a stump speech to me. Don't give it all away right here, but when you announce, come on. We got to go. Your satellite's going to go away in
we'll see.
3, 2, 1. I got to go. Thank you. Good luck to you. Have a great weekend, Governor. Thanks.
You bet.
We'll be right back with our breaking news on... That's fine.
Who knew cupcakes could be so painful?
But the smell of pain cream isn't very appetizing.
So I use Aspercream. It's maximum strength relief that's 100% odor-free. So all my customers smell is delicious.